4chan is no stranger to morbid crimes being posted, but one instance would begin a search for a man who has still not been found for years. Even with the initial search being wiped clean off the internet, people are still looking. It's a simple setup: gimp mask, scrubs, white gloves, and dead children. Acts of cruelty against the postmortem, possibly a mortician, a medical orderly, or a total psycho with sticky fingers that has access to the dead. To this day, no one knows. This is about one of the most disturbing internet mysteries, Dr.Gloves. Now, due to forum wiping, it isn't totally sure when the posting started, but it happened sometime between 2014 and 2018, where a user going by the name of Master would put self-uploads on Gore sites, of note including Death Addict and 4chan. Everything I am showing you in this video and discussing with you is all in the hopes of means of assisting identification of this individual. Everything that will be shown in here is highly censored. If you want to look further into this, be very careful because the photos are very accessible and easy to come up uncensored completely. Disturbing photos with no text attached started popping up on sites, showing a man in full surgical gear holding up trays of infant brains, deceased children by the neck, which started to become a trademark pose for the individual, along with mutilating the corpses of said fetuses and young infants, with what appears to be hobby X-Acto knife sets and medical needles. These all started appearing online, with no context except for our simple username. All these photos appear to have taken place in some sort of medical facility, which we will be getting into later in this video. But doing self-uploads on Gore sites has a history, including the likes of Luca Magnotta, where you are met with nothing but encouragement of the act, more times by just Gore hounds wanting more, or people kind of in a state of disbelief and not believing these truly are your content you're uploading here onto sites. Now, these gruesome photo sets I just told of you, depicting over dozens of photos in each sets, weren't enough for individuals on these sites. They wanted more. So he uploaded more of the same content. Dead babies, but once again, this is not what they wanted more. So what he took this in turn was, well, I guess I should go to some living children, shouldn't I? And that's exactly what Master, now better known as Dr.Gloves, went to do. He began posting with live children, mostly ventilator-dependent children, showing photos of him putting his fingers up to their faces, covering their noses and mouths. All of these children appear to have developmental delays or medical issues, as they are quite literally all hooked up with tubes and wires, as this man is visually at least obstructing their breathing paths that are already being assisted by medical gear. There's one set of photos out of these that stand out among the rest, mainly due to the fact that this child is not hooked up to any medical equipment. And on top of that, if you look even closer, this doesn't even appear to be in a medical facility at all, which once again we will get into further. I believe this photo set is something that would play a key part into the identification of who this individual is, and that is part of the reason he so heavily censors this. All of the photos earlier of the ventilator-dependent children, their full faces are in frame. There is no hiding of their identity. He made a very distinct, explicit point to hide the face and total identity of the child in these photos. This is a freestanding child with no medical gear in what appears to be a residential area of some type. In these photos, he is depicted, though, doing egregious acts to the said individual, holding them up by the hair, pushing their head into the lower region of their body, covering their face with their hands, and eventually holding up the X-Acto knife set that he showed earlier with pictures of him actually mutilating dead children. Now, it's not totally clear why everyone ended up flipping on Dr.Gloves, but you know, this is something that occurs from time to time. As much as they'll root for you, they will turn their back on you. And after a lot of these self-uploads, people started the chase to dox him. And they were not quiet about the chase to dox him, because why would they be? There was no reason to. And this actually isn't a very abnormal incident to occur, specifically on 4chan, as well as there was that incident where they saved a cat who was possibly being abused by owners, and other instances of reporting real-life murderers. The first step in solving any mystery at all is acknowledging what you do know. What are the facts of the case? Dr. Gloves can quickly be placed in the US with the outlets and fire extinguishers. Now, I personally believe these photos in specific sets are taken over different days and times, so this also gives the idea of this is someone who can hang out in an area. Once again, be very careful when looking into this and looking at photographs, but I have the unfortunate reality of I saw uncensored photographs, and you can kind of see decomp changes in certain bodies in certain photo sets. Looking closer at tiles, doors, and gear, this hospital or whatever this building was built most likely in the 50s or 60s. Not very updated at all, which isn't out of place at all for medical facilities, and especially what could possibly be morgues or body rooms. These are typically not the most updated areas because A, don't really need it, B, people don't really see it. He's wearing scrubs. At times he's also depicted in dress shoes and possibly button-ups, and of course he's wearing surgical gloves and a gimp mask. Surgical gloves are only used in surgery. They're quite expensive, and the gimp mask, both of these things in part to me, tells me he cares about aesthetics with his photos, which I believe plays a part into his motive that we will discuss later on. There's about 4 specific locations that are shown in all photos. Location 1 is a morgue or surgical room that I just mentioned. In these, he appears aggressively manhandling and choking, at times thumbs upping the camera and posing with the deceased infant, with medical tools on a tray used to mutilate the deceased. A lot of people refer to this as rundown or abandoned, but as I stated, a large amount of hospital morgues are just not really updated or upkept to the highest degree that, you possibly would think they are. They're clean, but they're not new by any means. And there's actually an entire 3D rendering of what this morgue is looking like, at least appearance-wise, due to the photos and placing them in conjunction with that. The second location is where all the living children would hook up to, and this has been identified as the Dignity Health Facility in Southern California, which is where all of these photos would take place and where these children were patients. Again, all of these photos had the children's faces fully in focus, in frame and everything, so they've given them to the police, and this will help in the identification process of victims, but nothing's ever been said or came out about that. Dignity, of course, is like, no one who works here is capable of that, or the one name we do have in relation with this due to a name badge, which, trust me, we're getting into it in a second, they're like, he never worked here at all, so they're just like, no, like, that totally happened here, but no one that was here had anything to do with it. Like, that's crazy. How did they get there? Let's just move on to the next place. The third place is where what I believe the most identifying photo set to be with this child that is freestanding in what I believe to be a residential place. This is just possibly an office or a home, but there's cable jacks. It has the, I don't know what to call those, the button light switches and the door hinges. It looks extremely residential. There's a chance it's a private doctor's office, or I truly believe these probably were taken inside of a home, and Dr. Gloves has some personal relation to this child in these photos, and that is part of the reason this child is so heavily censored. The last photo sets are in a walk-in cooler, either commercial or medical, and this is where we have the photos of him holding the tray of infant brains. It is worth noting in this photo set, this is the only time we ever did this, and it is quite odd. There are 2 photos of mid-autopsy that are not his. They are from a genuine educational video of how to perform infant autopsies that he just threw in here. Again, why? No one knows. I'm gonna go by the whole concept of shock factor and having let's add more gumption to my photos, so just took them and used them. This is the only time he ever uploaded things that were not his own creation, so it is quite bizarre this did happen. But with all of this, bottom line, we can come to the assumption this is someone with medical access to facilities, gear, and bodies, to some degree. To any degree, this is someone who has medical access. Going through photos and putting together sizing of him versus tiles and door frames, we can come to the conclusion he's someone that is about 5'8" to 6 feet tall. He has dark hair. He's a medium build man who may have abnormally small hands for his typical build. Along with this, he is seen depicted in scrubs and in dress shoes and button-ups, which is something typically only doctors or specialists wear around the hospital. So this could be someone of a higher level than just some orderly. At times, people do hypothesize there's more than one individual involved in these photos and gear and everything involved, and I totally can subscribe to the idea of that with how much, like, sneakery you would have to do to accomplish all of this inside an active medical facility. You could tell clearly in the surgical gloves that this is an extremely hairy individual, and through the holes in the gimp mask that they have dark-colored eyes, that some put out the idea is a woman in the mask due to the darkness around the eyes, which I personally don't think, but, like, I could totally be wrong. He could be putting makeup around the... just again to get masks for a second, which is not really the point of this video. So latex gimp masks. His looks like it could be a custom-made one. There is a diagram that has been made of them. I am familiar to a degree with gimp masks, and this is one that is, possibly a custom-made one. But with wearing gimp masks, some individuals will put makeup around their eyes with the gimp mask to truly isolate it. Also, if someone owns this, they might not, but they probably use it for other stuff. And part of other stuff can involve men forcibly being made to wear makeup. This could be residual makeup. There's a lot of things that come into play. I'm not saying a woman could not be involved in this, just due to the photos and the build of things involving the photo of which we're referring to. I think it's still the same guy. I think he just might have stuff around his eyes, or honestly, it's just the lighting in the picture. But some people hypothesize there is a woman along with this male individual doing this. But this is a great start. A basic description, a partial location. Location is honestly the most important thing to try to track down when looking into things. On top of the confirmed identity of the Dignity Health Facility where the live children were, a baby blanket that was shown in pictures involving the abuse of an infant's corpse was traced to be distributed only to about 10,000 hospitals, which mainly focused in California and Arizona. In conjunction with Dignity Health, I think we can assume this is a hospital that is taking place in California, or at least regions surrounding. Forums started popping up with threads of individuals showing their findings and cross-referencing with each other to make sure everyone's kind of working together and getting on the same path of doxing Dr.Gloves. Once again, as I mentioned earlier, this is not abnormal. It's similar to when animal activists were able to find out who Luca Magnotta was after making cruelty videos here on YouTube and eventually killing a man. But a very peculiar occurrence would happen with all of these threads. They would be totally, completely wiped off of everywhere they were, and there's quite literally no explanation behind why any of these were wiped. The oldest thing you can find is a re-upload of someone re-uploading all of Dr. Gloves' photos, and the statement as follows, surrounding the whole concept of, like, it is censorship and everything which way about it. There's a few thoughts. The first surrounds the concept that people who got as much information as possible contacted the FBI, and they were told there's no crime to investigate surrounding the photos, which we'll see is not really the case. The larger possibility is that in one photo we can clearly see an ID attached to the jacket Dr. Gloves is wearing. In particular, a photo ID with a name. So simple as that. We have his face, we have his name, we have his ID. Why am I talking to you about this? Why is this a mystery? Well, to put it shortly, that's not him. Or at least it's allegedly not him. I mean, just to begin with, why would someone who is so hyper-fixated on this concept and idea and anonymity of setting up a camera, putting on a sweaty gimp mask, and taking photos with deceased children like a prized fisherman? How would that man taking all of these steps be so absent-minded just to clip his ID to his jacket still? But of course, you know, you get comfortable. It's not abnormal for a serial killer to get caught due to his own negligence, due to the fact that, once again, you're comfortable. You don't care. You don't think about it. You think you are untouchable. And maybe that's the case, but it seems like it wasn't. And the badge in the photo appears to match the previously mentioned Dignity Health Facility, reading the name Edvin Ballens. It didn't take long for online sleuths to track down his address, phone number, and even car, and begin the spread of attack online and in person. It is believed the individual going by that name actually legally changed their name due to everything that occurred involving this, and it is worth noting, pulling up everything involving that name and in Southern California, there's nothing relating to any medical employment with that name, and the individual in question was a 20-something-year-old young male who kind of didn't really fit the description that was going on with the photos of Dr. Gloves. Numerous people claim to show the collected evidence to the authorities with the name attached as mentioned. According to the accounts we have of people, as once again, these threads are totally wiped. All we have are accounts of accounts and screenshots of screenshots of screenshots. So we kind of just got to take all of this with a bit of a grain of salt. They were told that there was no crime to investigate, but people argued under California law of abuse of a corpse, as the law itself states, no person except as authorized by law shall treat a human corpse in a way that would outrage reasonable community sensibilities. The key word, authorized by law, which in a way could create this large gray area where someone like a mortician who operates by law has to involve themselves with a corpse could not be considered abusing said corpse. Even with this gray area, I think it is undeniable for us to excuse the images of live children appearing to have their airways obstructed by somebody. But because these were just photographs and we don't actually have confirmation that their airways were obstructed, then yeah, no, technically that's not illegal. The photos with the freestanding child either technically don't depict anything illegal. Are they disturbing? Absolutely, but nothing in those are illegal by nature. It is absolutely worth noting that to this date, over a dozen search warrants have been executed in this case, and medical professionals and prosecutors who have seen the photographs do believe they depict criminal behavior, but a larger issue is that most of the photos are almost 10 years old, so the statute of limitations of those crimes depicted may have already expired. As mentioned earlier, Dignity Health Facility and law enforcement have stated that no one within the company is involved and no one by that name has ever been employed, and there's no way any of this ever really took place by anybody there. So if you trust healthcare industries and law enforcement, then you can definitely trust that statement. Back to identification purposes. Why was this badge in this photo? If it wasn't him, why was he there? Was this some weird get, which is something some people hypothesize that he was trying to screw over a guy who was the other person involved in these Dr. Gloves photos if there were two people? Was this just the case of making a fake and he just picked an unfortunate soul's name and got him a bunch of heat for no reason? It truly is the oddest part of all of this. I think without this badge ID, it'd be a bit more straightforward in a way, as straightforward as something like this can be. But going through, once again, all of the trouble of GIMP masks and anonymity, obviously he was able to be cyber secured to some degree. Why was this badge in this photo? Like, it truly is the most, like, haunting piece of evidence in all of this. It matches Dignity Health. But there's also no record of anyone by that name ever being involved in Dignity Health. The guy whose name it was some 24-year-old guy with a few arrests and quite literally nothing involving anything to this scale, and not someone who would have a medical badge. So why was this here? There's a revolving door of ideas of who this individual was or is or anything involving Dr. Gloves. Once again, medical orderlies, morgue workers, security officials for the hospital, because time and time again, people have commented on this who actually work in the medical field and discuss, like, people don't really check. If you're in scrubs and have an ID, you can just kind of book it through hospitals and they don't even, like, glance at you. So this could quite literally be, in theory, a guy off the street. I personally do not believe that to be the case, and everything I'm about to say to you is my own personal opinion. I am not a professional in any means involving quite literally anything at all. So this is just my own opinion about what I believe the profile on this individual may be. Once again, take this as a grain of salt. I'm not a professional, okay? I believe the person doing this is doing this for two possible reasons. As all crime self-uploaders, attention. This is always a very large key factor for them, and this absolutely got attention, even with people begging for more. I would argue negative attention gets you much further online at times. The other possibility, or just aspect, is that this is a gratification act for them. Having and wearing the GIMP mask, along with the constant use of strictly surgical gloves, the way he'll set up and pose himself in the dead, shows extreme focus on the so-called aesthetic of the shot, and the act which can be used for self-satisfaction or for the satisfaction of others. It is not out of the realm of possibility that this does it for them, even if it's just the power exchange of doing it and not necessarily the act itself. And having it paired with a negative reaction, it wouldn't shock me at all. Once again, to reiterate, this is just my speculation. If you see or recognize absolutely anything to any degree, do not hesitate to report it if it does not match anything I'm saying or any other depictions of this individual. If you see something, please say something. I believe Dr. Gloves is someone with some small level of authority in the medical field, above a nurse, who is able to move throughout a facility into various parts without question. I believe it to be a middle-aged man, medium-light complexion, dark hair, larger build but not heavy set. In comparison of the door frames and floor tiles, around 5'9" to 5'11", shoe size 11 to 13. I think there's a chance he has some sort of identifying marker on his upper arms or arms with how certain things are sat on him with the gloves and the sleeves. I believe the freestanding child in the pink shirt would be a very clear way to identify him, as this is the only child with a covered face and photographed in what I believe to be a residential home. Although he absolutely stopped posting online and has never been seen since, I do believe he still is involved to a degree. Maybe he doesn't post, maybe he just lurks around and, brings up his own name and, gets off on having this some sort of notoriety around. I will say, there's not really Gore sites anymore, at least on ClearNet. I'm not going off ClearNet and searching for anything like this. I'm real good on that. But I think an individual who got to this point definitely lurks around. I think he was lurking before he posted. I think he was spreading seeds of something, or at least, wanting to be involved. I think he's still involved, absolutely. I think just, the heat came a little too close, because I do believe he is someone in California with everything we have, and I think that was even too close for comfort, and he totally ditched his content creation, we can call it. I do believe he is someone that can be dangerous to children and vulnerable individuals, and I do believe the identification of him is highly important. Here's the thing. They're not going to arrest him. Let's be so real. But I believe it is important for his identity to be revealed, that someone would do things like this comfortably and get, honestly, gratification out of it, because he absolutely does. And on top of that, this is someone in the medical field. This could be your pediatrician. You don't know who this man is, and I think it's highly important that, if possible, we know who this man is. Once again, if anything in this looks familiar to you, or you believe you can have any assisting information at all, I am putting the website here above, who is focusing on the identification of this individual, where you can put in your tip. Please only put in serious stuff. Do not clog things up and just put messages in there. This is truly a tip line to help identification means. I think the internet is one of the greatest inventions probably that will ever exist in the history of mankind, and there is so much good that comes out of it, but this also gives a light into the dark side of humanity, and depravity, and disturbing and disgusting things and individuals, which is absolutely what happened in this case. That was all we really know about Dr. Gloves. If you watch this, thanks for watching. I don't know. It feels very odd I don't think I've ever covered something so, heavy and serious and technically active before, so, feels weird to, crank on the personality at the end of this video, but if you watch this, thanks for watching, liking, commenting, and subscribing. Make sure to turn on the notification bell. Follow me on every social media platform under Darby Valentine. They will all be linked down below, along with the website that was just on the screen as mentioned. And have you heard about this before? How does this make you feel? I don't know. Let's talk about it in the comments. This is super duper intense. And one last time, thanks for watching. I will see you next time. Goodbye.